And now please welcome a great CEO in our industry, Marissa Mayer. Marissa, come on up.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Dreamforce. We are thrilled that you got here. It's very exciting to have you with us.
I'm very excited to be here. I absolutely love the shoes.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I take that because you always have the best fashion advice for me, but my mother's not happy with my suit. So any recommendations there?
I think the suit is good.
Okay, good, thanks. So we're gonna get her on the line. Marissa, first of all, thank you for agreeing to come to Dreamforce and being here with all of us. This has been a dream of mine to be able to have you at Dreamforce, to be able to have the conversation, because honestly, of all the young executives that I've met in our industry, of all the people who I've had the opportunity to interact with, I've really never met anyone like you. It's really spectacular. And what my goal in this brief time that we have up here together is to just somehow connect with everyone in this room and online to show them what a phenomenal new leader we have in this industry. We have dedicated this conference to the power of women. We heard a phenomenal story this morning from Petra Nemkova. We also had Meg Whitman here. But we are really excited, truly, to have you with us. So thank you for agreeing to be here. Well,
I'm so excited to be here. And obviously at Yahoo, we're big Salesforce customers. And we love your product. And so I'm really excited to be here amongst so many fellow customers.
Marissa, let's start at, you have this incredible new job now as the CEO of Yahoo. And I met you far before that. You were working with another company. And one of the things that I noticed, I can't even remember that company's name actually, but you were working at another company, and one of the things that was really interesting to me was your deep dedication to the employees that you're bringing into the company. It was not unusual for me to connect with you, usually on email or text, and you were in India, or you were someplace, and I was like, what are you doing? Well, I've got all these employees in with me, and we're orienting them to how we're doing business here in this country. And I was just blown away. And can you just talk about your commitment to your employees and how you look at the development of them and the development of them as leaders? Because it's really blown me away.
Well, I think that in our industry and in the digital world, it's always about designing for global. And it's really hard to design for global if you haven't been there. If you haven't seen how people use their phone in Israel or use their laptop in China or Japan. And so I think it's really, one of the things I really love to do throughout my career, I've been a product manager, and sometimes on a small scale, sometimes on a big scale, but bringing new product managers in and asking them to design products for the whole world is really pretty daunting. And so one of the things that I've made a point of doing over the years is traveling with them and learning myself. So it's fun because they get to learn, I get to learn. We'll do user studies, we'll meet with advertisers, we'll meet with users, venture capitalists, just trying to understand, what is the pulse and the vibe of digital in that country. And it's been really amazing to just see all the different insights.
On those trips, was there something that happened specifically or in the abstract that really committed you to keep doing that and doubling down on the development of those employees? Because I do think it's so unusual, and it's quite motivating to me that you're able to do that at all levels of the organization.
Well, I think that one of the key things, I think there's two different things that I think they bring a lot of value through that. One is all the product insights you get. So sitting down with a user and understanding, what motivates them to, buy an iPad or a new laptop, how they make those kinds of trade-offs, how they use them differently, what it really means to be, how do you type in Japanese or Chinese, and really how do your products translate, or how do they not translate in those markets? That's been a big part of it. But another big part of it is the team. And for me, it's really about the team. And one of the things that happens is when you're in an unusual place, it just bonds you to the people that you're with, right? The people that are having those same experiences and insights with you. So those are the two main takeaways. One is it is about the products, the end users, how well your product works for them. But the other piece is that it really does phenomenal, something just really special that's hard to replicate in any other setting in terms of team building.
Well, that's amazing, and in that dialogue you mentioned product a few times, and you have a phenomenal product philosophy that I think not only drove this massive success of your previous employer, but also that is unique to you. There's a commitment that you have to simplicity and to making things as easy as possible, and you have a passion around that that's really unusual. Where does that come from, and why do you think other executives haven't been able to embrace that commitment to, user excellence?
I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but I think that, for me, it's all about the user. And, you have to be a user of your product to really understand what works for people, what doesn't work for people, what frustrates you, why are you waiting too long, and when something just takes too long to load, or when different options get in the way. And so, I think that for me, it's about the user, and it's also about, I've got a lot of different philosophies. Like, I think that you should design for the expert user, which a lot of people don't equate with simplicity, but I think that you should build products that are really fast to learn. So in a matter of days to weeks, you can be an expert. And Salesforce is a great example of something where you can be an expert. It's a very advanced tool, but you can be an expert really quickly. And when you have products that work like that, you can basically say, okay, we're going to simplify it, break it down to the core essence of what it's trying to do for that end user, and build exclusively for that, build for that pathway. And you might say, well, 2% of people are going to do something different here or there, but is that core pathway through the product, the core functionality that you're providing, that you really want to streamline?
Yeah. So, fantastic. We have a very, do you bring a fan club with you, or is it is this a, all right, well, we will, all right. Thank you very much for that message.
I'm on the board of Walmart, but obviously today is about Yahoo.
All right, well, we're going to keep going.
So.
I'm dispatching Burke Norton, our general counsel, is heading over to go talk to them, which is wonderful. Thank you, Burke, for rapid response.
Thank you.
We have a great legal team here. But let's talk about that. What does that mean, the expert path, or you're not designing for the expert user?
I think that when you design for the expert user, you want a tool, because I think that one of the things that can happen is you can trade sophistication off against simplicity. And if it becomes too sophisticated, it ends up turning users off. You're basically saying, okay, there are 10 different things a user might do on this screen. And that's when you start to get an interface that's really confusing. Because someone who you don't talk to, who you haven't designed for, shows up on the interface and says, I have no idea which of these 10 things I should do. This doesn't make any sense to me. And so in that case, it's really about helping to design for the most common use case and making that really fast. I think a lot about Xerox copy machines. Right? They can do really fancy things. They can staple, they can collate, they can, they can do all of the different pieces. But the truth is, if you just walk up to one and press the green button, there's usually like a giant green button, the right things just happen. And on every product, there usually is that big green button, which is the 98% use case, and you want to make that an amazing experience, a delightful experience, a really simple and fluid experience.
Why do you think more people are not designing this way? And I've never heard that articulated like that. So I think that's really beautiful. So why aren't more people doing that?
I think that they are. I think that if you look at the progress in design and the value that's placed on design in our culture and in industry over the past 5 to 10 years, it's really remarkable, right? I mean, where design a lot of times used to be an afterthought, get the product working and then make it look pretty, and now it's much more about, okay, well, it's not just about the visual design, it's about the interaction design and how do you actually make the paths through the product really straightforward. I think that there's actually, design has come a long way, and will go even further in the next decade.
Do you view yourself as the chief design officer? Is that your role, or do you have somebody like working? Somebody,
no,
I'll tell you why I asked you that. I had this really interesting experience with a phenomenal company, and I was with the CEO, and the CEO said, look, we're a design-first organization, and I'm the CEO, but the CDO, the Chief Design Officer, works directly for me, and everything is part of the design. And then I had another amazing experience. I went to London, and I was with our customer, Burberry, and I was with Angela Ahrens and Christopher Bailey, and they're like, you need to understand something, Marc. We're a design-first organization. You see this conference table that we're at? Well, this is the same conference table in every store, in every conference room all over the world. And Burberry has a consistent brand, and the design is paramount to our success. Now, in enterprise software, this is not how we think, okay? So that's where we're like, whoa, what are you talking about? And then I'm like getting the kind of like a recollection of that as you're talking, that design is so important, and you're finding that user path, not designing for the expert user, but for the beginning user and getting through. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so a few things. I think that we have an amazing design team at Yahoo. They've done a beautiful job refreshing basically every product in our entire product lineup over the past year. So we've had just incredibly talented designers there, and they've just done a phenomenal job. We do have a spot in my executive team that is not hired at the moment. It's my one to be hired.
Okay.
And
now there's people here with their resumes. Would you?
And it's an SVP of design. So if you know anyone or anyone here knows anyone, we're hiring an SVP of design, and they will report directly to me. For me, I don't get to spend a lot of.
Joni Ive is very good. But
I don't get to spend a lot of my time on design per se, and that's probably good because I'm not a designer by trade. And so, but I think that for me, I do love design. And in my role at Yahoo, I think that part of what I get to do is work with the team.
I see.
And while I don't get to design the products, you do get to design the organization.
Yes.
You get to design the strategy. You get to design how does it feel to be an employee at Yahoo. You get to design how does it feel to be a user of Yahoo, right? You can design, it's one of the most complicated and interesting design problems I've ever worked on in my career. So that's the part of the design that I get excited about every day. But the beauty of the products, and they're getting to show some of them now, the new Flickr, the new weather application, which won the Apple Design Award, and we're really proud of how beautiful the products are, and how easy they are to use, how simple they are, how we've really managed to get them to melt away to their core essence in terms of what users really want. But that really is to the credit of the team, not to me.
Well, you're obviously, though, inspiring and prioritizing design. And that's, you've brought that into many parts of your life, I know, and here you are making it kind of this kind of seminal part of your leadership and of your value system for the company, which is, of course, what's probably on the mind of every person here, Steve Jobs, where, he had a very much a similar message, putting design first. And, are there other designers that are inspiring you in that direction, other CEOs that are inspiring you in that direction, or do you really feel that you're somehow pulling this through uniquely?
I think that when I looked at Yahoo, it was really, when you look at what is Yahoo's core verb, right? Like some companies aim to connect, right? Some aim to organize. For us, there's really been an element of Yahoo all throughout, and you and I have talked about this in the past, that's been around entertaining. Entertaining and informing and ideally inspiring. And so when you look at those values, design is inherent to all of them, right? You can't have an entertaining, a delightful and inspiring experience unless it's well designed, it's thought out. When you have literally billions of users coming each month to the website, you have to be in a state where you've really thought through the experience each one of them is going to have. And so, I think that that's really where we're focused in terms of the design and the piece there. So I think it's been much more internally driven from what Yahoo has to offer its users and what we want to ultimately put forward as the face of our products, and as opposed to externally influenced.
Do you think that this is one of the most important things for all companies to consider? Before you got here, we also heard from Walter Robb at Whole Foods, George Zimmer, who had a phenomenal success at the Men's Warehouse. We also had Paul Rapps from Leviev speak. Do you think that all of these companies, Salesforce, all the companies here, is this something that we all need to bring in? The thing that kind of hits me is that when I didn't go to business school, but I have an undergraduate degree.
I didn't either, by the way.
What's that?
I didn't go to business school either.
We're in the right club. And nothing against anybody who went to business school, however. It's all good. And don't want any more protests on business school. So, but if you want to do a protest, you can do it outside, number one. Number two, it's better to split up. Then you start. Then when those people get arrested, then the second group stands up, then the third, and the fourth. That's how.
But see, that's a design problem right there.
Disaster recovery.
You're designing, right? You don't even realize it.
Design problem. Well, we think about that in software. We're like, how do we have redundant systems in place? Anyway, I'm not giving any coaching for the future, but I'm just saying if I was to do it, that's the way I would execute it. All right. Do all companies need to do this?
I think that it really depends on just your frame of reference. I would argue that all these companies, especially really well-run companies like Salesforce, like Whole Foods, really do value design above and beyond everything. They may not phrase it that way, or they might not frame it that way, but you're thinking about what is the experience of a customer, what is the experience of a user, what is the experience of an employee, what's the experience of someone who's in the world and is adjacent to the impact that our company has.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I mean, I don't think I do it enough. I don't think most companies do it enough. I don't think it's something that's taught or expressed very well. I think we've had very few profits of it in our industry. I think we've had companies get wiped out because they have not focused on it more intently. And, you know, what's the cure for that? I mean, you know, how are we going to build that core competency into our companies? Is it like I was instructed to do? I should have a chief design officer working directly for me. You have a passion for design. You have an intuition for design. I mean, obviously I don't. You see the shoes.
I love the shoes. The shoes are amazing. I want a pair. I think it's a balance. I mean, I think that, you know, one of the observations there is, I mean, I do think companies can fall, frankly, too in love with design. Right? If it's all about design. I remember in the first .com bust, I had a friend whose startup went belly up, and he was the chief design officer, chief usability officer, and they were in the blame placing phase of the dissolution process, and everyone had to write a white paper about how their department contributed to the downfall of the startup. And his white paper was entitled "Usable versus Useful." And his point basically was, well, look, you know, he was there, and it was his job to make the product beautiful and usable, and he felt like he had really done that. But at its core, the product wasn't that useful. So I mean, at the core, you really do need to have something that users want to use every day, and be it Salesforce or, you know, with Yahoo, we really focus on what we call the digital daily habits: stocks, news, email, search. You know, all of those types of things are things that people want to do every day, but you need to have a core value proposition that is fundamentally useful, and then you can, you know, have design be a core part of that product offering. But it's important, I would argue that it's important actually not to lead with design, but to have design be part of the part of the overall product process.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, I think you're articulating the very premise that Yahoo started. I mean, I remember the first time I ever went to Yahoo. And everything that you're articulating, that is what was in place at the very beginning of the company. I mean, I went to Yahoo because it was so easy. It's kind of a code word for designed well. And it was so easy, and you knew exactly how to, you know, get some news, get a stock quote for the first time on the internet, find something, all of these things. Is it back to the future then for Yahoo, so to speak?
It is. For us, you know, we don't think of ourselves as design first. We think of ourselves as mobile first. And when you look at what's happening with the mobile trend overall in our industry, it's clear that it is a wave large enough that you can ride it to reinvention. And you know, Yahoo, like many companies, is a company that has to constantly reinvent itself. And the scary part about reinvention is it happens best with platform shift. Salesforce obviously rode the platform shift to the cloud. With Yahoo, we really want to ride the platform shift to mobile. And a lot of people say, well, how does that work? But what's really remarkable when you look at the products that Yahoo's always had to offer, our services, they correlate to what people do on the phone. When you look at what people do on the phone and you set aside voice and text, it's mail, maps, news, weather, stock quotes, games, share photos, you know, and the list goes on and on. And it basically—
check blogs.
And what's crazy is when you actually list all of those out, if you listen for a second, it might be what people do on their phones, or it might be Yahoo's core offering since the very beginning. And so, you know, it is a little bit of back to the future, but it's taking those products that have always been really useful, but perhaps are even more useful now on the phone, because I would argue that weather, maps,
right.
news are actually much more useful on the go.
Well, it has to be true, because the first time I ever used an iPhone, a number of the apps were just Yahoo or a user interface on Yahoo. That must be incredibly either motivating or frustrating, that some of the most incredible and most used apps on phones are Yahoo.
Well, it makes me hugely optimistic, because it means that we do fill a core need in people's daily activities, and so we are filling the digital daily habits.
Yeah, I mean, the Stocks app that's right on the, right on the iPhone, it's all Yahoo. So do you think that just was too hard for, leadership and employees to make that leap, that we need to put everybody on this, or we should continue going over here and dabble over there? Because here are these apps. 2008, we had unbelievable Yahoo apps on phones.
Well, I think that, when you look at Yahoo Finance, there's the obvious functionality you'd want, which is, provided by the default app. But then there's a lot of deeper functionality overall. And I think that mobile caught a lot of people by surprise. Right? I mean, it's really amazing how much people use their phones and how quickly it's happened. And so I think that when you look at the history for Yahoo, it just wasn't clear at first how quickly to make the move. And then two, designing how mobile gets done inside the company is hard. Right? Because you can say, okay, should the mobile engineers be with the mail team, with the finance team? And the problem is that then you end up with a few engineers, and it's sort of everybody's hobby, but nobody's job. And also you could imperfectly do, which is what we've done now, is you could round everyone together and say we're going to have a core mobile team. And they've got to work with the domain experts, but what they're going to get really good at is building mobile applications. That's not perfect either, but that at least gave us the critical mass. And so we took that group from between 30 to 60, depending on how you measure it, to now almost 400 year over year. And it really helped us get much more serious about building mobile applications. And they're showing some of our mobile applications
now.
I'd
love to see it.
But I do think that, for us now, one of the things I'm most proud of is we have almost 400 million monthly mobile users, which makes us one of the biggest mobile companies in the world. And 400 million monthly users on mobile. And it really does, when you look at our applications, they're beautiful. It was wonderful last week watching the tweets as we released the new finance application, because people said, Yahoo really is making a name for themselves as being one of the best app development companies in the world. And that's really what we've set out to be, because we think that the content, the services we have to offer, suit themselves perfectly for this format.
So was that a crisis of prioritization?
Well, no, I don't know. It was sort of interesting for me, because I came in and I had talked to the board when they hired me about the fact that I really believed in mobile, that I thought you needed to ride platform shift in order to reinvent yourself. Platform shift is scary because it's like surfing. If there are no waves, you can't ride it. But I said, I think the mobile wave, if we can catch and harness even part of it, it can really propel us. So I came into the company really believing in mobile, and for the first few days I went down, sat in the cafeteria, wanted to understand the experience of what our food was like, what was it like. At Yahoo, really just sort of jump in, feet first, and people would just come up and talk to me. And on about day 4, there was this guy named Tony who showed up, and he said, I'm a mobile engineer, I'm on our mobile team. And I was like, great, how big is the mobile team? Because I'd only been there for a few days and I was just sort of getting my bearings, and he was like, 30 people. And I was like, I don't have a great poker face, so I looked shocked, I think. And he was like, oh, but there's more in the teams. I was like how many more? And he said maybe 60. I went to engineering management and said, how many people do we have working on mobile at the company? And they said, 100. And I said, an actual 100 or 60 rounded up to be 100 to make me feel better? and they said, well, maybe more like 60. And so I said, okay, we're gonna have to change that really fast. And so we pulled, there was a great leader. He was already at the company through an acquisition a few years ago into now, Adam Cahan. I pulled Adam over off of his tablet TV watching app and said, hey, can you be our SVP of mobile across all the products? And he's really risen to the challenge, recruited great people, and really helmed a lot of the design and the work that you've seen and referenced has come through Adam and his team, and just the amazing group that he's both recruited and groomed from within.
Wow.
So it wasn't really, I guess it was a crisis, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
it was just like, it was an immediate priority.
Yeah. Well, we have a common board member. Your chairman is on our board of directors, Maynard Webb, who's here. And you know, when you go and then talk to the board, how do you explain it to them in the board meeting? What do you say? You know, I've been here now 90 days, and you know, these are the 3 things we're focused on in the company, but these are the 3 things we actually need to be focused on the company. It's going to take this much time to do. What does the gambit look like?
I mean, I think, well, and you know, I've worked really closely with Maynard. He's been a tremendous coach and a great inspiration for me, and you know, it has really helped me get off to a great start at Yahoo. I think that, you know, for me, I mean, I thought that when I entered the company, there had been a lot of different strategies for Yahoo, a lot of different directions over the years. And I think that I really approached it from the position that leadership is listening. And there were a lot of great people at Yahoo. It's really remarkable. Every week we have an all-team on Fridays, and we celebrate people who've been passing milestones. And almost every week we have someone who passes their 15-year milestone at Yahoo. We had 2 just last Friday. And so there's a huge number of people who've been with Yahoo forever. And they have amazing loyalty. They also have amazing ideas. And when I went out and started talking to Tony, the mobile engineer, and everyone, they said, you know, we know what the problems are, we know how to fix them, we just need someone to tell us, go. Right? We just need someone to clear the path and ultimately help us run. And so I really viewed my role as not laying out a grand, you know, 100-day plan, all of that, but instead to go, to listen, to hear what ideas the employees had that they thought were really going to work, and then help craft that into a direction. And one of my other mentors, Eric Schmidt, once said this thing that's really humbling as an executive, but he said, you know, good executives confuse themselves when they convince themselves that they do things. He's like, so the sad part is, as an executive, you don't get to design, you don't get to code, you don't get to do many of the things that you would do day to day, you know, earlier in your career. What your job is to play defense. The team is offense, they're gonna move the ball. Your job is to clear it, say, you know, hey, we're gonna run in this direction, and then clear a path, and get the obstacles, the process, the bureaucracy, the naysayers out of the way, and help people run as fast as they can. And so, for me, it really wasn't, you know, like, But it wasn't so much about setting out a grand plan and a grand strategy and justifying it to the board as it was helping Yahoo realize the greatness that had always been there, the great ideas, the great products, and how to re-envision that in a more modern way.
Well, you hear this incredible response from the audience, and I think that that's what they hope their CEOs would be doing as well, which is, or it might be my employees just signaling me, I'm not sure. But, you know, actually there's this great book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I don't know if you've read it or followed him, but in the book, he has a concept called permissions, that one of the most important things that a leader can do is just provide the permission for people to be able to do it. And if they don't have that permission to put design first or mobile first or express themselves, it's not in place in the culture. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, one of the things we saw was that people, you know, have great ideas. Both on the product side, we've rolled out all kinds of things that help the employees participate. We rolled out this thing called PB&J for process, bureaucracy, and jams, where people can say, you know, here's something that's getting in my way. If more than 25 people or 50 people or 100 people voted up, we have different thresholds, it gets addressed right away. We've literally fixed more than 1,000 things in a year inside the company with that process. We have allowed for all kinds of participation from what we call dog fooding, actually taking our products and using it and letting people report issues. You know, so sort of it's built off the principle of eat your own dog food, right? If you work at a dog food factory. So like we create these apps, we want to use them, and so that's been great. But also in our board process, you know, getting back to Maynard and the board, one of the things that we did, which it has had all kinds of unintended consequences and for the better, was I really wanted to provide transparency, because I think that when you provide transparency, you build trust with the employees. And so one of the things I did when I first got there was I presented the board slides. So I presented them to the board, and then that Friday I presented them to the company. Made our general counsel very nervous. Everyone said, wait, like you can't present the board slides to the whole company. But I said, why not? And it turned out with just a few redactions, you actually can. And then the company understands what's happening in the boardroom. They understand what kinds of decisions and information the board's being presented with. And I thought that was great, and I thought I was being really transparent until I ran into the Mozilla CEO. And he said, we do that too, but the other thing we do is we have our employees write the board slides.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, how does that work? And not to be one-upped, I was like, well, wait, I can.
As well,
I can do that. And so we put up a tool that we call a little moderator tool. We have a highlights and a lowlights tool that every time we have a board meeting coming up, everyone gets to say what they think the highlights and lowlights this last board meeting are. They vote them up and down. And what I think is really interesting about it is it provides a lot of transparency for the employees into the boardroom. But the unintended consequence that has been a real advantage is from the board, is that one of the things that happens is sometimes the board doesn't get a clear view of what's happening in the company. And that notion of being able to talk directly to the employees and have them say, like, look, this is a product that I think is going really well. This is a product where I think management is delusional. Like, it's not going that well, and they need to really rethink it. That process has allowed for a lot of that. And so, I think that, transparency and really having employees involved in saying, here's where the problems are, here's what we think the solutions are, and really enabling that. So I think the permissions piece is pretty much right on.
Now, when you think about that and when you tell the board that the employees are going to be writing the slides, is that a shock to them? Are they saying, no, we hired you to run this company. We didn't hire the employees, and we want you to tell us what's going on. How do you resolve that conflict between the board looking to you to get the results and you looking to the employees?
Well, we've done it now a few times. So it was funny because I did it in April. I said, to the company, I said, okay, we're going to do this experiment. We're going to have you guys write the board slides, or at least part of the board slides. I reserve the right to deduplicate. So if you put the same thing twice, I'm not going to say it twice. I'm going to deduplicate it. But I'll basically present it. Otherwise, in steadfast to the way you stated it here on the moderator tool. And I told the board and everyone, I said, look, it's an experiment. Like, let's just go with it. And the board really appreciated it. In fact, like in the follow-up to those slides, they said, can we do this every time? How should, and are there more ways that we can incorporate this kind of moderator tool and this kind of visibility into the company? Because I think it's really valuable for them as well. So now it's become a tradition, and it's just part of our standard board meeting process.
Okay, well now you've illuminated two complete unique aspects of your leadership. One, you've said you yourself have first principles, you have your own vision, you know what needs to get done. You want to be mobile first. You want to be design first, if you will. You want to make sure that you have a commitment to human development and making the best of people. And over here, you've articulated a broad democratization of the employees and empowerment, a level of transparency and trust. And you're bringing these two things together to kind of express this next generation of leadership. How should we look at that?
The way to reconcile it is, if you go back to that piece of advice, it's that when you're playing defense, right, you decide as a team what the direction is. The team and I are saying mobile first, design is really important, and then it's my job to clear things out of the way and enable it. And when you look at the Yahoo weather app, I didn't design that, the team did. Interestingly, even of the now almost 400 people who work on mobile applications at Yahoo, I didn't recruit a lot of them. In fact, a lot of them were internal transfers who came and said, it's really hard to change departments inside the company. We want to change departments. You say mobile's really important. We think mobile's really important. We want to go work on mobile. Like, can you make that happen? And that was one of our first things we addressed through PB&J, actually, was make the internal transfer process smooth, because I've always believed that water finds a way, right? Either you help people work on what they want to work on and what they're really passionate about, or they'll find another way. And there's certainly one that serves Yahoo and our users better. And so, again, it was really my job to help, one, coalesce the vision from the company, which I think really came from them, and the fact that mobile is so important and so applicable to our business is really an insight that I didn't have exclusively, and then help people actually get to the point where they're working on mobile because you've actually made the internal transfer processes and things like that really easy.
Here you are at such a young age, the CEO of a phenomenal global multi-billion-dollar company. One of the things that I noticed when you were at your previous employer and even now, you also take a huge amount of time to develop yourself personally. You're meeting with an extraordinary set of leaders. You work in community-based organizations, too numerous for me to go through, but it is not unusual for me to see that. You also network at a severe level. I mean, you know everybody, and you spend the time to understand them. And I won't go into the depth of your commitment to your family and your whole life, but you live a truly multidimensional life. And I've had the opportunity to witness that firsthand. How does that come into play with your career? You know, you have your career, you're developing yourself in extraordinary ways, and you have this phenomenal life that's coming together that is so multidimensional, and yet you've been able to integrate it so beautifully and then express these next generation values and leadership. Can you give us, there's a lot of people in this audience who want to do that as well, but we get stuck. Maybe we're too over here on our career, or we get too over here, too much personal time, or we don't have enough time over here on family, or we're trying to balance it all, we're trying to make it all come together.
Well, I mean, thank you for the compliment. I'm glad it looks like that. It's sort of like that line. There's a line in the movie The Titanic where, like, the old woman says, like, I can assure you the actual experience of it is quite different. Because it ebbs and flows, and it's not that smooth. It involves a lot of ebbing and flowing. There's times when you have a lot of time to, work on community causes and, network, and there's times when you have zero time, and it also involves a lot of changing in the backseat of your car, which I did today. Because like you have no time, and you're always just running from one place to the next. But I think that for me it's really about prioritization, and you need to be very clear about what your priorities are at any given moment. And for me right now, my priorities are family and Yahoo. And if I have time for anything else, it's just a bonus, right? It's just icing on the cake. I've said I'm from Wisconsin, and Vince Lombardi, yes, thank you to all the Wisconsinites in the crowd. But I'm from Wisconsin, which of course is the home of the Green Bay Packers. I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, I'm also a 49ers fan. But Vince Lombardi was a phenomenal coach in the early days of the Green Bay Packers, but also a bit of a profundit. Like, he'll say things like, the only time that work comes before success is in the dictionary, or success comes before work is in the dictionary. But one of his sayings is, he was like, look, my priorities are, God, family, and the Green Bay Packers in that order. And so I joke that mine are God, family, and Yahoo, except I'm not that religious, so it's really family and Yahoo. So,
Well, you've actually come back to how you started this dialogue. You've made it clear that prioritization is somehow the secret to your success, that this is the first thing you did when you got to Yahoo, but yet this is what you're doing in your personal life too, that prioritization, you think, is this a critical part of being a successful leader today?
I had a good friend in college who, her name was Eleanor. She just said this thing once when someone asked her, because she was really, really good at prioritizing, and someone said, how do you do it? And she was just like, how do you get everything done? And she just said, look, I just make a to-do list every day in priority order from the most important to the least important. And she's like, and I celebrate the fact that I never get to the bottom of it. She's like, because if I did ever get to the bottom of my to-do list, I would have spent a bunch of time doing relatively unimportant things. And I thought that was actually just really profound and just very clearly stated. Like, look, just line things up from the most important to the least important. And there's a lot of people who say, well, gosh, I'm just never going to get it all done. I'm never going to get it all done. And there's some people, when they see more work than they can get done, they get really overwhelmed by it. But the other thing you can do is just embrace it the way that Eleanor did, and just said, you know what, I'm never going to get to the bottom of my to-do list. And if I did, it would be a real bummer, because think about all those things that are at the very bottom of your to-do list that really shouldn't take time out of your day. And so, I mean, I think that, I'm not probably as good as prioritization as I need to be. I'm trying to get better, but, Eleanor was a real pro at it, and I thought that, that frame of mind was something that really has helped me because, there's times you're just like, well, wait, like I'm kind of working on things that are unimportant. Should there be something else higher on my to-do list, higher on my priority list?
Are you looking for other leaders in your company to have that kind of skill set, or do you feel like that's your dominant role, or do you want everyone to be able to prioritize and keep things mindfully in the right place at the right time?
I think that there's the philosophy I ascribe to there is there are team leaders who want to make sure that everyone on the team is a little bit not as good as they are at things. And then there are people who say, look, I want to surround myself with team leaders who are every bit as good as I am, where any of us could be doing each other's jobs. It's just which shoe the foot is on.
Awesome.
And so, for me, I'm really lucky at Yahoo. I have a phenomenal management team, and it's been a great story of finding them because about a third of them were at Yahoo already. About a third of them I knew before I got to Yahoo, and about a third of them I've met since I've gotten to Yahoo and have hired in there. But my management team is incredibly strong. Every single one of them is better than I am at things, and usually multiple things. So in a given moment, almost any of them could step in for me, and I could step in for them. And I just think that that's the sign of a really well-functioning team, is that kind of fluid leadership where everyone just pitches in to get the work done. We're all playing a role, but the roles could be interchangeable because of the strength of the players.
Well, Marissa, you were my first choice to have an interview for Dreamforce this year. I'm so glad that you accepted. They've signaled me that it's time for us to end our interview. But I'm so glad that everyone got to see what I see is we have an exceptional new leader in our industry doing extraordinary work with an exceptional new leadership philosophy. Thank you so much for coming to Dreamforce.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well done. Well done.